Welcome. Thank you for being here. I see we've got some people that have joined us already. Can you hear me okay? That's what I want to know. Let me just move this slightly. Yes, okay, I love that. I know that there's going to be a couple of people dropping in, so I just wanted to first off start this today with some Palo Santo. I was burning some sage earlier, some buffalo sage. And so I just invite you to land here, to arrive. And thank you for being here. I know as people start to trickle in, I'm going to be sharing with you all a new chapter with our practice, with our channel here. And for those of you that are here, I just would love for you to know that I am going to be communicating with you through the chat. So sharing your voice in the chat is really helpful. And knowing also where in the world are you tuning in from is really beautiful as well. So in the comment section of this video, just mention that you joined our live. So you can just type in live in the comment section below the video. I am not able to see the comments yet, but if you want to connect with me, you can message in the chat here for those that are attending live. And if anybody is tuning in as a replay that wasn't able to make it to the live, I just want to thank you so much for watching this video. And we're going to be sharing some beautiful insights to your practice, but also what is on the horizon here as well. So just type replay if you're watching this after the fact, and that lets me know that you tuned in. And I am seeing already we've got Tim here. Welcome, Tim. Thank you for joining. Tim is one of our Nova Nidra teachers, a graduate there. Also Robin, another graduate. Oh, thank you. Thank you. We've got, I don't know if I'm going to say some of these names right, so please bear with me on that. But Claudine from Belgium. We've got Lily from Australia joining live. Peter, welcome, Peter, one of our newer members of the Peace and Rest program. And yes, Robin joining in from Sydney, Australia. Cindy from Madison, Wisconsin, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Live in Minneapolis. I'm from originally just north of North Dakota in that area, so I know the cold you speak of. I don't live there now, but I have a very, very vivid memory, a visceral memory of how cold it is. So welcome. I hope you found yourself somewhere cozy to settle into today's session. And who do we have also here? Heike from Spain. I hope I said your name right. And Dana here from New Zealand. Welcome. And Tracy, I'm so excited about this next chapter as well. It feels so good to be on this live, yet I'll be honest, I haven't done a live on YouTube for some time, so I felt that little kind of applause in my heart that we're back and sharing in this way. So I'm really grateful that you're here. And I want to also acknowledge those of you that are joining from the Nova Nidra community. For those of you that aren't familiar with the Nova Nidra community, I am actually just going to share this in our chat, and I'll share it in your, I'll share it as well in the comments so that you can check it out too. And the Nova Nidra community is a space where you can connect with those that really enjoy the practice of Yoga Nidra, that have been listening and wanting to meet others. It's a global community, and we in that space go through self-inquiry. We're asking questions every week. There is also going to be something that I'm going to announce at the end, so I really hope that you stay tuned for that, because I would love to connect with you even more deeply. So yes, that's what we're going to be exploring today, is some of the next chapter here. And what else do we have on the docket? Yes, also the Nova Nidra community. For those of you that aren't familiar with the community, you can join. Currently, the space is available for you to enter into for free. Sometimes this changes, so I'll just give you all a heads up on that. And it's a place where you can support the Yoga Nidras that I offer. So I know that you can access them completely free here on YouTube, on Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, and many other podcasting platforms. But if this work has shifted your life in any way, if you feel like it's something that you're leaning on and you'd like to give back, there are ways that I continue to support you, whether it be in live sessions for the new moon or special little workshops that we're offering. You can find those in the Nova Nidra community, and it's a way for us to connect more deeply. And yes, who else do we have here? Tamara, thank you for joining from the Netherlands. Vala here from Iceland. Beautiful. Thank you for joining, Vala. And I also wanted to just, thank you again for those that are finally making it into their space here. Hope you're nice and cozy and ready for today's session. I would love for us to just take a moment and connect with ourselves here. So let's first arrive to this container that we're holding for ourselves today. And in order to do that, we're going to first tune in to our surroundings. So wherever you are in the world, I would love for you to just feel your sit bones planted where you are, or whatever may be beneath you, the surface beneath you. Feel a connection to that. And once you feel that connection, I'm going to invite you. This is just a little orientation exercise that I'd love to share with you so that we can ground ourselves into the space. So just noticing when you're sitting here, what is around you. So you can sweep your gaze from one end of the room to the other and just getting familiar with your space. You know, there's sometimes not a lot that we can control in this world. So let's at least make our environment that we're currently in as welcoming as we can. So if you need to close a door, close a door. If you need to draw a curtain, draw a curtain. Or if there's a picture that's just a little off, you can make it just right for yourself so that you have very little distraction and that you can be fully present with us here today. And once you feel like you're really comfortable and set up in your space, then I'm just going to ask you to place your hand on your heart, maybe lower the eyes or close them completely, and just notice for a second as you observe your awareness here of your breath. Just noticing what sensations are coming up in the body and maybe where they're located. So maybe noticing how your hips are feeling, how your shoulders are feeling, your neck, even the top of your head. Noticing if it feels calm in the body, if there feels like there's little sticky parts. And we're not judging any of this right now. We're just observing it. And even feeling into the breath, you might notice that the belly expands as you inhale and the chest. And as you exhale, the belly draws in, the chest draws in. And we're not changing it. We're just watching it. And as we scan our body all the way from the crown of our head down to our toes, just noticing what's happening inside our body. Becoming aware of those sensations. And then do we notice that there is an emotion that's in this awareness? Can we pay attention to maybe where we are emotionally coming into today. Do we feel joyful? Do we feel equanimity? Do we feel excited? Is there a little bit of sadness maybe that's here? Is there maybe some frustration? I know getting onto tech can sometimes bring up a lot for us. And noticing maybe there's some residual parts of ourselves that are touching into maybe even anger. And that's okay. Everything is welcome here. Okay? Everything is welcome here. These experiences are just visitors. Okay? But being really honest with ourselves, we want to be honest with what we're feeling, what we're sensing. And from here, take a deep inhale. Another inhale to fill the lungs a little bit more. And exhale, let it go. Out through the mouth. The hand can drop down, just blink the eyes open. And let's acknowledge how we're feeling. What are we noticing in our body? And if you can go over to the chat, maybe just one word or one phrase that is going to encapsulate what it is that we're bringing into today's session. And again, everything is welcome here. Everything's welcome here. So one word or phrase. I'm just going to check the chat and see what's coming up for everyone. Feeling grateful, beautiful, serenity, settled, calm, loving, relaxed. Beautiful. Love seeing these come in. So nice to see that we're bringing in this energy, serenity, calm, loving, more relaxation. Beautiful. Oh, hi, Rick. So good to see you here. Rick's a member of our Nova Nidra community as well. Tracy coming in a little tired. That's okay. Almost vindicated. Crystal clarity. Wow, we like that. Crystal clarity and a gem to go with it. So what I'm noticing actually is we've got a lot of relaxation, really calm energy coming into this space. So I just want to thank you so much for taking care of your nervous systems in this way. And if you're feeling something else, and even if you're coming into this as a replay, share in the comments below, what you're feeling coming into this session. And that's going to be really helpful and insightful. More gratitude. I love gratitude energy. All right, so for those of you who don't already know me, if we've got some new faces in here, my name is Ayla Nova. I am a trauma-informed somatic coach, but you probably know me most through my Yoga Nidra practices that I've been sharing with all of you. And I also guide Yoga Nidra through the Peace and Rest program and train the teachers through that space as well. And I really would love to name that is part of this new chapter. And I am excited to dive into all of these different parts of this practice. And also, I want to support you. I want you to have a takeaway from today. So as we go through what this is all going to look like, you may want to write some notes. You might want to take some things down so that you feel like you've got little points of data to express what you received today. Thank you, Steph. And hello, Wayne from Germany. Beautiful. All right, so I'll just speak a little bit more to my journey and why we're going to be exploring the teacher training. Now, I'm not sure how many of you are listeners of or following or subscribing to the Lunar New Year, But this is coming up actually in February on the 17th. And so stay tuned because I want to share with you a little bit more about the potency of that near the end of today. But ultimately, we're going through this collectively, a little bit of shedding, and we're in the year of the snake. So as you can imagine, we're releasing some old skin, old habits, old patterns, old beliefs. And I want to share with you a way that I was able to support myself in this shedding, not just in this season of life, but in the seasons before. And I want to actually kind of find out from all of you, because we're coming close to this new offering, maybe you were thinking about the new year. Maybe at the new year, you had some ideas or revelations or resolutions that you were calling in. And we can sometimes let that drop off. We're getting closer to the end of January. We're thinking that we want to move towards something, but what is it that we truly are desiring? And this is when we're going to tap into the Sankalpa. I want to talk about the Sankalpa, but I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey before we get there. So ultimately, what is it that you are wanting to call in? What have you been investing into with your energy as we enter into this new year? And now, as you consider that, as you come to that conclusion in this moment, and know this can always shift and this can always change, I'm just going to share with you a little bit about what I'm seeing going into this time. So when we're practicing Yoga Nidra, we're using something called the Sankalpa, and I'll get into more of this later. But when we use the Sankalpa, this is a level of resolve. So if you feel called, if you feel welcome to, you can use the word, perhaps just the one word that you're using for your Sankalpa as your resolve. Or you might have something going on in this season of life that you're looking into. So maybe we're considering one word. Maybe it's focus into 2026, whether that's with the sun or the moon. What is it that we're calling in? What is it that we want to bring to light? I know that for myself, focus is one that's coming through for me. Also intentionality. Maybe there's more than one word, but let's see what's coming up for people right now. Alignment. I see some words in here. So what are we going to be focusing on this year? And I want to see if there's maybe some common themes or threads in here. We see healing, cultivate, beautiful, epic, beautiful. Action, yeah, amazing. For the first time, I'm seeing these little crowns here, and they've got a crown number 1, crown number 2. I think that means you've been listening the longest, so thank you so much. Ease, grace and ease, calling in more of that. Beautiful. Yeah, peace, clarity. Oh, hi, Jeff. It's ITS, I'm not sure, but yeah, beautiful. Okay, so maybe just having this as something that we write onto the page if we're writing this down, and just coming back to this and having this as an intention. But know that when we come into the new year, even the lunar new year, and this talk of shedding and releasing and also coming into a new chapter, that's what today is about, entering into a new chapter. And with the practice of Yoga Nidra, we're allowing ourselves to rest into this new chapter. It's action comes from the rest. We see in the yin yang symbol, there's the dark side, the light side, and within them there are both. So we can't just be resting and we can't just be in action. We need to find what a balancing point is for ourselves within that. And what I'll share with you in this is my story. I'm going to take you on a little journey. For many of you, you might know that if you've been watching the channel for some time, that I entered into sharing this practice and offering it over the last 3+ years. And it's been such a remarkable journey for me. And I want you to also understand a little bit of the beginning stages of that. Now, I say this with love. I did go through some tumultuous times. This all came together before the pandemic happened. I ended up getting diagnosed with a very rare form of leukemia. And this is a type of cancer. And it went into not one type of blood cell, but every single type of blood cell, which made it very rare. It was a very rare type of cancer. And because of that, the treatment and protocols were a bit rogue. The approach needed both science, but it also needed, at least in my journey, a connection to something more of a spiritual practice. Because ultimately, when we go into something that's life-altering, it doesn't just rock our body, it also rocks our spirit, our soul. And for many of you, you know that point of my journey. I've shared this with you before. But what you may not know is ultimately that was the tip of the iceberg. Now, go back. I experienced some I had some complex experiences. I call them influential moments. Some people call it trauma, but I like to call them influential moments because I would like to shift, and maybe you want this for yourself too, to shift the language that we use so that we are feeling empowered about our life rather than a victim to our lives, right? So ultimately, these influential moments happened, and they happened a lot, and they happened in different ways. And so ultimately, my initial experience with that was to cope. And, I didn't even realize I was coping with it the way that I was, having substance abuse, having really porous boundaries, wearing a mask, showing up to different places as a different person, essentially, because I needed to create safety. And in order to feel safe, I had to mold myself to the environment that I was in, to the relationships that I was in, to the experience that I was in. And maybe some of you can relate to that. Does anybody else know or experience that, where they kind of had to show up in different places as a different version to feel safe? You can just type yes into the chat if that's something that you can resonate with. And eventually, over time, this accumulation of self-abandoning, self-sabotage, of not really understanding myself in a really deep way, I got to the point where I got myself into a lot of trouble. And because of that, I ended up having to go to group sessions. And in those group sessions, I heard someone talk about how their partner had suggested going to yoga. So I ended up going to this yoga studio. Next thing you know, I'm on a 30-day challenge. Next thing you know, I've been going there for 3 years. And all of these, added influential experiences, they all add up to this accumulation of tension in the body, tension in the shoulders, tension in the neck, inability to sleep. I would close my eyes, and when I would close my eyes, one of my influential moments was I was underwater and I could just hear all the rushing water going over my ears, and I couldn't sleep because I felt like every time I went to sleep, I was submerged in water. So it was very, very challenging. And eventually, after practicing yoga enough, I ended up hearing the volume of that rushing water start to go down. And eventually, this led me to want to understand yoga more. And it wasn't necessarily in the warrior pose or the downward dog that I was having this revelation. It was in stillness. It was in the slower movements. And maybe some of you can relate to this, is that with the influential moments that have added up in your life, you may have also coped with that by staying busy, by not slowing down, by making sure that there was always something on the go. There was something in the distance that you were going to next. There was something next, so that you could be at peace, so that you couldn't slow down enough to let life catch up with you. And I ended up becoming a flight attendant through all of this. And so I was constantly running away from my problems. Something didn't work out, got on the plane, went away, right? And ultimately, this took me to the moment that life grounded me. There was no more substances. There was no more getting on the plane. Doctors had diagnosed me and I was grounded. I started to lose my mobility. I wasn't able to walk at some point. I even experienced heart failure and went into a induced coma for some time. And I share this with you only because I want you just to have some insight to the intensity of this accumulation of experience happening in the body. And also on a scientific level, it's these sort of things, they can just happen. But also when we consider what stressors we're putting on our body, when we put this many stressors on our body, and I'm not a doctor, just explicitly saying that now, but when we put these stresses on our body, we leave ourselves very vulnerable to illness, to getting sick. If we're not sleeping, if we're not eating, if we're not taking care of our bodies, ultimately we leave ourselves quite vulnerable. And this is where the Sankalpa can really help us, and I'll get into that in a moment. But yeah, so I see that some of us feeling that shift as well, noticing productivity equals self. Yeah, thanks for naming that stuff. Yeah, for way too long, right? And I knew that yoga was helping me. I knew it was supporting me, and I wanted to learn more. So I got on a plane and I went to India, right? And I was like, I'm going to stay at an ashram, and I did. And I'm going to practice yoga every day, and I did. And what was interesting about the school I went to is I went to a Tantra ashram. And in the Tantra ashram, it's not what you think. Tantra is not what you necessarily immediately have come to mind. During the movement of the 60s and birth control was coming out, and everybody was like freedom and being able to fully express themselves. And so the Eastern philosophies were making their way over. Everybody was really excited about it. And so Tantra has this kind of idea that it's meant for like intimate experiences, but it's so much more than that. It's actually a way of being. Tantra is, in essence, the life essence. And from that, there's all of these different teachings that stem from the root of Tantra. And Tantra is allowing us to connect with our senses, to connect with ourselves in a very holistic way. And while I was at the ashram, we would go through this practice where we would lie down, we would move our awareness through the body. And enough times that this happened, in Shavasana, they call it, corpse pose, I felt like I was having these very profound experiences, sometimes out of body, sometimes deep within my soul, going into these dark places and coming out and not quite sure where I'd gone, but ultimately always coming back to the body. And I took these teachings and I get back to Canada, which is where I live now, and I really was able to integrate that into my life until eventually the environment I was in had shifted. I was no longer in, the jungle and around the coconut trees and by the beach. I was in traffic. I was in situations where you're being asked to go out and enter back into this life that you once knew, while still having this information available to me. But how can you integrate that into your life, your daily life? So I took this practice that I experienced in India, brought it into my everyday life here, and started to notice the wave come back. High moments, low moments. And in somatic work, we call that a window of tolerance. And essentially, our nervous system is going through this wave, these ups and downs and ups and downs. And we start to get comfortable with that. Chaos starts to become comfortable. Deep, like high experiences, really elevated experiences. And for some of you that are in this space that work as first responders, or if you're in like a flight attendant like I was, or working in those places where it requires hyper focus, you get very programmed to live in that high, low experience. But we all have that same kind of experience. But ultimately, the nervous system over time, when we have that high, low, starts to get exhausted, starts to get burnt out, starts to make it so that we can't sleep, starts to make it so that our body starts getting a little upset with us. And if we don't cultivate the practice of deep listening, then that can take us on a journey that maybe we are not going to be ready for, which I can attest to actually through lived experience. So there was that issue. So I couldn't integrate what I learned in India fully into the life experience that I was having around me. But I did have the knowledge, and I continued that knowledge. I started to go to this one studio, and they only offered it once in a while, but it was the practice of Yoga Nidra. And it was kind of new to me, but I get there and you just lie down. And I had the same experience of what I had had in India. And I thought, okay, this is interesting that there's these parallels here. Like, what is the common denominator here? And while I was taking an Ashtanga yoga teacher training, they had a special guest come in, Mina, a teacher out of Calgary, absolutely beautiful woman, inside and out. And she guided and taught us a little bit, just a little bit about Yoga Nidra. And immediately I was just in awe of this practice. And I used it actually at that point in my life for creativity. I found that some of my greatest ideas, some of my greatest like art and poetry were coming out of this practice. And I also was having profound experiences with my emotions. I was starting to feel like I was unlocking parts of myself that I hadn't really experienced before. And I couldn't put words to it. You know, have you had that before? Like maybe yes, no in the chat if you had those experiences where you couldn't really put a name to it, but it was profound, right? And we dive into this a little bit more when you get into the Peace and Rest program or the teacher training. And when I really got into it, I felt so connected to this practice, but I wasn't living in the way that was really resonating. I'd learned these teachings, and what was happening was I started eating the vegetarian lifestyle. I started going to the yoga classes again, and I started doing all of this. But what I wasn't aware of, and maybe some of you can relate to this as well, what I wasn't aware of is that I was doing yoga, that I was doing the work. I was in this constant productivity, even in my spiritual practice, because ultimately the underlying belief was that in order to be at peace, in order to, at the time, I was also kind of grappling with like going to heaven, right? Like I have to be so pure. I have to have like nothing wrong with me. So I'm going to eat right. And I'm going to do all of these things to make me more perfect, more pure, more acceptable. And what ended up happening was that productivity into my healing journey actually started depleting me. So imagine going from one side of the spectrum of feeling these influential moments accumulating in my early childhood, late teens, late 20s, and then coming into this practice and going to the other side of the spectrum, trying to maintain this purity and get completely clear. And eventually what happened was I get this diagnosis and it flattened me, right? Completely grounded. So I came back to the practice of Yoga Nidra, and it really helped me because I couldn't walk, right? I couldn't get around. So laying down was my only option. And it was through these visualizations and taking myself on these journeys that were completely for myself that I started to connect to self-realization. Now, fast forward a little bit from that experience of lying in the bed. Eventually, I get a transplant, and the doctors say, a couple of months after the transplant, unfortunately, Ayla, the transplant was unsuccessful. We are currently out of options. And yeah, you've got an expiry date, 6 months to a year. But if you are like me, hearing that, there is denial, you start to grieve, you start to go through this process of like meeting your endings. But I still so deeply felt connected to the practice of yoga and to the spiritual base that I wanted to understand more. And even knowing that I was at the end of my days, so I'm here, so obviously that didn't work out that way. But what ended up happening is I signed up for a teacher training, a yoga teacher training, a Yoga Nidra teacher training, in fact. And it was really transformative because I didn't sign up because I thought I was going to be a teacher. I didn't sign up because I thought I was going to lead classes or be on YouTube or share the practice or share it in this way. I signed up because I wanted to understand an element of my soul that I'd never met before. And I also wanted to face the fear of death. All of us are going there one day, whether we like it or not. It's the only thing guaranteed in life. And when that time comes closer to you, and just know that, like, I don't say this to be a downer, but like, we don't know when that time can happen. And for me, I was very lucky. I got to find out, what they were sharing with me, so I could at least make peace with my life. But I don't feel that you are wanting to wait to that point to make peace with your life. And if you are someone that's tuning in right now and you are going through a health, some issues with your health, or making peace with your mind, then I just want you to know that you're not alone, and there is a way to meet yourself differently. And I took all of those pieces of this puzzle and I put them together into a unique training for how to become a Yoga Nidra guide. And I share this all with you because one of the most common things that people will mention to me about the teacher trainings or going into a teacher training is like, well, I don't know if I want to teach. Well, it's not about leading necessarily in a class or a group, but I will let you know that you'll have all the tools that you need if you decide that you do want to teach and share it in that way, or even put on recordings or start your own YouTube channel. Like, this is all possible. But ultimately, we go into these trainings so that we can teach ourselves how to discover peace within. And this is why I created the Peace and Rest program. And the Peace and Rest program is opening up the teacher training in March. So the window is now open for you to join. And, if you want to just kind of get to know some of the people that have been through this before, I know that we've got some members here that have joined the teacher training that have gone through it already, who have also, thank you. I'm happy I survived too. Thank you. If you want to connect and just learn more, there's absolutely no pressure. There's no pressure to join the teacher training. And there's also stages that you can enter into this so that you can meet it at your own pace. So I want to be crystal clear about what you can expect if you're feeling this nudge to go deeper within you. If you feel this nudge to be able to create boundaries, to be able to access your voice and not just use yoga as a way of doing things better, but a way of being better with yourself. Right? So if you're feeling this kind of nudge, and like, just stay for the curiosity of it, if anything, which is that when we come into the peace and rest space, we first have the arrival, understanding how we're going to move through this together, and also how you can connect with people within that space. And there's practices that are unique to this program so that you can integrate these teachings, because ultimately this is the piece that I've found was missing in a lot of trainings. And this isn't to put any shade on any other trainings. I've been to many, and I realized the way that we learn this is very cerebral. It's very in the mind. I could spit a lot of knowledge about Yoga Nidra and about yoga to you, but can I actually say that I live within the yogic practice? Can I be in that practice? And I don't have to justify it, because I'm sure if you're listening to the recordings, you can hear that it's lived. It's an embodied experience. I've looked at the demons. I've gone into the darkness. And that is why I share this with you, so that you can see the light within yourself, right? So we first arrive into this. We get to kind of get the lay of the land, and then we connect to our sankalpa. We connect to our understanding of our environment around us, we connect to our heart, and we connect to our sankalpa. Now, the sankalpa is a unique offering that I share with you through the practice of Yoga Nidra. Not all schools of Yoga Nidra offer a sankalpa practice, but I find a lot of value in it because it has really supported me on my journey. This self-realization of my spirit, of where home is, right? And, you know, people will come into this, not just because maybe they had this similar experience of me, but you might also be landing into your endings, you know? Maybe we moved to a different town. Maybe we have ended a particular relationship, gone through divorce. Maybe we are, you know, going through grieving of letting go, or perhaps we just have this like thirst for understanding the practice more deeply. Everybody comes to these trainings for different reasons. So when we arrive together and we set the intention, just like you set the intention today when you came into this call. You know, stated for yourself, I want to discover ease. I want to discover peace. You know, we carry that through this entire program. And then we get in tune with our nervous system. So once we've arrived, that's where we get into regulation. And regulation is synonymous with our embodiment. Because as you can imagine, when we have a regulated nervous system, guess what we experience more? Peace, ease, clarity, trust, love. It all comes from this peaceful place within ourselves. And so you're going to experience the tools that you need to be able to regulate the body, right? And once we become understanding of regulating our body, we're starting to see also in the spiritual context what that means energetically. You know, what is this energy? What is this undescribable, like je ne sais quoi of our practice, right? And once we get through that regulation of our body, we then move into the layers of Yoga Nidra that help us with integration. And integration is where we start to notice those beliefs, right? Like, what is the story that I'm telling myself to hold my energy, to hold my body, my regulation in that state? So the integration is actually becoming a witness and an observer of your experience to the depth that you can actually connect more deeply with yourself. And once you can name it, once you can see what it is that's playing over and over again, we call this samsaras, the wheel of samsaras. These are patterns that are happening over and over and over again until eventually we draw a line in the sand and we say, no, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not repeating this pattern over and over again. And it's important that we do this work because if we don't, our body doesn't regulate and it will tell us, and it will be loud and it will be clear. So that's where we go into integration. Now, once we've completed going through these layers of our being, then we allow ourselves to do that work. If you've been hanging out with me for any time, we practice with our eyes closed. We're practicing in the dark. And what do we notice in the dark? Is the shadows. We notice the shadows. We become aware of the shadows. That's where we can create transformation. This is where transformation occurs because we become aware. We become aware of the samsaras, these wheels of patterning. And then we meet it differently. We meet it through regulation. And this is why in this program, you join with me every single week so that we can practice this as community, practice this together. And if you aren't able to come into it live, then you can always watch the replay. So it's always available to you in that way. Once you've gone through your arrival, your regulation, your integration, and the essentially meeting into the shadows, the initiation of meeting your shadows, that's where transformation occurs. And from that transformed and embodied place, that's where you step into the seat of the teacher. Because now you're not just saying you know something, you lived it, you've experienced it, and now you can share your voice from that. And that's what this teacher training is built for, is for being able to take your practice and be able to lead your life in that way. So now we're using our voice, we're using our words. So one of these elements of your practice, I'm not sure if you're already doing this, but journaling after your practice, huge, huge benefits to this. If you feel like there's resistance to writing, then you especially need to be writing after a Yoga Nidra practice. Now, with this, leading into the training, you're going to learn how not just to write in a way that's going to maybe support others. You are your first student. You're your first student. So we go through this in a way that you create something for yourself, and that is the starting point of sharing and leading for others. This is also not something you do alone. You're doing this in community. You're practicing in community, but you're also co-creating with whatever that might be for you. Maybe it's God, maybe it's the divine, maybe it's Allah, whoever that might be, whatever that may be. Maybe it's nothing. Whatever that is for you, that is what you connect with to create, to harmonize, to make peace with your life, make peace with everyone around you. Because, you know, some may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I think John Lennon said that, hence the John Lennon vibes today. But we are all dreaming of this. The world is going into a place right now where a lot of us are wondering, what's going to happen next. A lot of us are sitting in uncertainty. But what we can be certain about is our connection with ourselves. And the stronger we build that relationship with ourselves, the stronger our relationship in our outer world is going to become. It doesn't happen with a huge movement. It happens with us, one at a time, connecting with others and connecting in that way. And so if you're feeling that call to deepen your Yoga Nidra practice, then I would love to support you in that. So the first step is joining the Nova Nidra community. This is where you'll learn more about the teacher training. This is more about where you're going to connect with other people around the world. It's completely free right now, so you'll want to get in now before any of that changes. And it's also a way to support some of my work if you're not feeling called to take that next step towards the teacher training. Yeah. So how much time do we have left? Okay, we have a few minutes left. I'm just checking out here. Teacher training was fantastic, a great way to really deepen your practice. I never joined because I thought I was teaching, but I don't regret a moment. Oh, thank you, Tim, for sharing that. And yeah, if anybody has questions, you can leave those in the chat. Is something that might not be here when we're done this call today. So I would mention that if there's any questions that you might have, either you can bring them into the Nova Nidra community or you can leave them in the comments below, and I'm happy to answer those for you. And I'll also be pinning a website for you to go check out so you can get all of the juicy details. But ultimately, please join the Nova Nidra community because that's a place where you can connect with others immediately and also join us for some live events. I wanted to, before we end our call today, is just lastly talk about the Sankalpa, because this is a really important part of the practice and it's the one that people have the most questions about, most curiosity about. And I wanted to give you a little nugget to take away from today as well. But ultimately, coming back to what it is that you're calling in for this year, let's just do a little practice. So wherever you are, we've already done a scan of the room. You can check it again, make sure everything's all Gucci. And when you feel like you're comfortable in your space, I invite you to lower the eyes and maybe even close them completely if you feel called to. From this space, just inviting that word back in: peace, ease, focus, clarity, action. I think someone even mentioned action. And I want you to just notice all of the sounds around you. So with your eyes now closed, your outer vision is moving inward. So maybe our other senses, like our hearing, starts to peak up. We can hear the sounds around us. We can feel a little more deeply into the weight of our clothes. We can feel our sit bones. maybe even the coolness or the warmth of the air, and then savoring into this moment. We're just resting here for our awareness. And as we rest, maybe observing once more a scan of the body from the crown of the head all the way down to your sit bones, to your toes, to your fingertips. Then returning to the space of the heart. And perhaps the word that you brought into today resonates with your Sankalpa. Perhaps you're maybe exploring what your Sankalpa may be at this point, and that's okay. Or maybe some of you we've been working with a secondary Sankalpa, maybe something, an extension, a branch off from that. Just holding that close to your heart. And I want you to visualize now, so the awareness moves up from the heart to the space between the brows. There's this this proverb that says, the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The next best time is now. So I would like to invite you to just take this seed, whatever that word was, or perhaps using your Sankalpa if you feel called to. And I invite you to just plant the seed, maybe visualizing putting a seed into the earth with your fingers right around the space between your brows. Imagine planting a seed. This is your intention coming out of today's session. Just planting the seed, just allowing for it to go deep into the rich soil of the mind and the heart. We plant the seed at the mind so the roots move into the heart. And then from here, let's connect to our breath. Inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth. And now inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale again, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. One more time. 1. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Resting in the stillness again. Letting the breath drop. Noticing a release of tension in the body naturally occurs as you just settle a bit further back into your sit bones. And just notice when you repeat this word, this Sankalpa or intention, notice how it feels in the body. If you embodied this word right now, what kind of sensations would you be experiencing in yourself? And perhaps you might notice it isn't coming to you as a sensation. Maybe you visualize it. Maybe you see a picture. It becomes really clear. You may notice that there's a scene that you're sitting in. Maybe you might notice that there's people supporting you that are around you, encouraging this to be planted. Begin to visualize, to feel, to sense that this intention is here for you now, that it's already present. Just trust it for a moment, resting here, breathing and being. You might start to notice the corner of the lips lift towards the ears. And then maybe even imagine visualizing yourself watering the seed. Every single time you rest into stillness, you can feel that this seed is being watered, that it is rooting all the way through your body, extending out like roots, a system, a nervous system regulating into your truth. And then when you're ready, start to feel the breath begin to deepen. Start to feel a little wiggle into the fingers, into the toes. And then maybe you open the eyes and start to witness the room that you rest in. Start to notice everything around you, getting a little bit more acquainted. And as you come back into this space, just sharing in the chat what you're noticing. What are you noticing? Share in the chat. What is it that you're noticing? Space, everything, equanimity, beautiful, pleasant and relaxed. I'm so grateful to hear all of that. Calm. Beautiful. Warmth. Whatever you may have discovered as you came back into the space today, I just invite you to let some of the resonance of our experience together to overflow into the rest of your night, whether you're going to sleep or into your connections that you make with friends today, family, colleagues. And again, I invite you to explore the Nova Nidra community. This is going to be where we're connecting. And as promised, we are, I know I'd said to you, I just want to grab this one link here. I wanted to share with you that coming up to the new moon, going into February on the 17th, I'm going to be hosting a way that we can water that seed even more. And you can come into that space in the Nova Nidra community, ask questions about the teacher training, get everything ready to go for yourself. I'm just going to send that to you there. And also I wanted to wish you a happy birthday, Heike, for joining us today on your special day. And let's meet again. Let's meet again when the moon is new and join together and plant that seed more deeply, water it, and share that peacefulness we explore with the rest of the world. And again, I hope to see you joining the teacher training. If you feel this call to understand yourself more deeply, or even lead your life in this way, then I have a wonderful group of individuals and community that's waiting for you. Rest well, everyone. Be well. And thank you for being here. Namaskar. Oh, and one thing. If you found something valuable today, if something was insightful for you, please leave that in the comments below. I would love for people to learn from each other. That's really a big part of community, and we can always start there. So that is it. That is all. Share what you learned below. Thank you.